a lot of times the braids and your braiding regimen or routine gets put on the back burner, because for one, it's not fun to be out in this weather, and two, you just think, well, I haven't been using them, so those braids should be all right. They're typically not, especially if you got a horse out in pasture or even in a pen that's just not as clean as it could or should be. That's getting a lot of dirt and grime and crud in those braids that over time dry them out, make them brittle, and you get the dirt and sand or even manure in those braids, and that becomes abrasive, and it'll rub those hair strands and cause them to break. So stay up on your braiding routine. What's up, guys? Welcome to Behind BioMane. Today, I'll give you a little behind the scenes of what we do when we're not making horses prettier. We gotta feed the things and gotta feed the cows that we have. So we're driving up to Parowan, Utah to load some hay that we've got up there and bring down. We used to keep a bunch of steers up in Parowan for some jackpots that we were putting on, and we moved all the cows down to our feedlots down here closer to home. And so we're gonna go pick up the remaining hay that we had up there and bring down to the house. So stick around, see a little bit of what we do behind the scenes. Parowan.
What's your favorite thing about Parowan?
My favorite thing about Parowan? Got a small town feel. I do like that. Got just the main street, little diners. Got a good pro rodeo. Got ski hill right up there. A lot colder than home. We did it. I love the snow and the mud and the ice. Okay.
Good to go.
Now it's banana malt time. Oh, dude.
Did they put the extra bananas?
That's really dumb.
What?
To put the lid on over the spoon, because when you pull the lid off, it gets your spoon all nasty. Ooh. Guys, if you're ever in Parowan, Utah, Dairy Freeze. They're on, I don't even know the name of the street. It's got to be Main Street. Main Street or Center Street. You will get malt all over your spoon, but it's the best banana malt you'll ever have in your life. That's pretty good.
Scale of 1 to 10.
20. Driving through a storm, and it made us think of winter tips for making sure your horses are doing well and keeping their manes and tails as nice as you can in weather like this. I think in the last post we did about it, we had 4 tips. One of them, probably the most important one, I think, is to keep their pens clean. And if you were to come to my place right now, they're not great. We've gotten a ton of rain, and it's just, even if it's not raining, it's overcast and they just aren't drying out. But to the best of your abilities, keep your pens clean. When those horses get in wet ground, obviously you're making them susceptible to things like thrush, rain rot, bacterial type infections. If you can avoid those, by all means do everything you can to. But also, it's usually too cold to wash them, and if they're in a nasty pen, they're wanting to lay down at times of the day and night, so it's hard for them to lay down in a bad pen. If you notice, I mean, some horses are just pig pens, they want to roll in the mud and that, but majority of horses, at least that we've got, don't want to lay down or roll, obviously, in a wet, nasty pen. So it's harder on them because they're on their feet more. So tip number 1 would be keep their pens clean. Another one, and it's kind of more of a common sense one, but sometimes you think it's warm enough to wash a horse or even spray their mane off or shampoo it up in their tail, and it's really not. And I don't know the right number for degrees to tell you to wait until it's warm enough to do that. Just use common sense. Like, there's days that'll be a little bit cold, but we got a lot of sun, and if you put them next to like a steel building or a wood building, that heat will radiate and it helps them stay warm and dry out faster. Those are some tricks that we do. But don't do anything to get those horses too chilled, wet and chilled, and cause any type of sicknesses. Manes and tails. A lot of times the braids and your braiding regimen or routine gets put on the back burner because, for one, it's not fun to be out in this weather, and 2, you just think, well, I haven't been using them, so those braids should be all right. They're typically not, especially if you got a horse out in pasture or even in a pen that's just not as clean as it could or should be. That's getting a lot of dirt and grime and crud in those braids that over time dry them out, make them brittle, and you get the dirt and sand or even manure in those braids, and that becomes abrasive and it'll rub those hair strands and cause them to break. So stay up on your braiding routine. You may not need to do it as often as we recommend, 7 to 10 days. We still do it that often, but in the winter months, if you're not using them as much and they're stall kept and those braids look good, you may be able to extend that a little bit. I would recommend using conditioner even if you're not redoing the braids every 7 to 10 days. If you see those braids looking a little drier, just when you're around the horse, get some conditioner in your hands and run it through the mane and the tail. Keep that soft and supple. What was our last one? Blankets, I think. Make sure, if you're blanketing your horse, make sure those blankets fit and check them frequently. I check, every day, every couple days. Pull that blanket off, make sure the horse isn't rubbing anywhere. And I say this from experience, I've left blankets on that I thought fit good, and then after a few days I go pull those off to get on the horse, get the horse saddled and get on the horse, and I see, like, on his chest, he's rubbed out of the hair right down to the skin just from a poor fitting blanket. Up underneath their legs, their back legs, make sure their straps are adjusted correctly so they don't get in any type of bind or a wreck. And make sure up over the withers that blanket fits good, because what will happen a lot of times in the winter blankets will rub across those withers and it'll rub a lot of that mane down, breaking it off, and even rub it down bald. So be mindful of that. We like to use really tight fitting stretchable material hoods on them. It keeps their mane in place. It keeps them, a tad warmer. They're not insulated or anything, but it does keep that hair slick and short and protects them. Adds a little layer of protection, but the biggest thing for me is it covers those areas on on the horse where the blanket typically would rub hair out. It has those areas covered with a tight fitting material that prevents any hair from rubbing and breaking out. So those are our winter tips. Hope you guys aren't freezing. Stay warm, stay dry, and try and keep your horses the same.